Debra Hart, Learning Ally, so they can check for themselves on the availability. Because if it's not available, they work with the Disability Service Office, and they may need to have the text scanned for them. But again, this is all, they have to help advocate. They have to do all the advocating for it. Another skill that our students have to learn to work with is using class websites and the portals. So Google Classroom, Moodle, the navigation sites for the colleges. So you may have heard some of our computer teachers using more Google Docs recently, and that's because there's been such a push in the world at large for it. Another important skill that our students have to learn in college is to manage their own personal information. So they have a college email address as soon as they register for classes, and they have to recognize, oh, I'm getting email there too. So there are tricks to it. Most of my students choose to go into that college email address and set the rules so everything's forwarded automatically to their Gmail. But if that step doesn't happen, they might be getting emails for weeks and have no idea. So there's lots of just little details, and that's why it's so great that our students have the opportunity to take the classes while they're still with us, so we can kind of work these things out and help them figure out for themselves what solutions work. Another thing that's a new skill is learning how to follow a syllabus. So in high school, the teacher provides lessons, you know, every day pretty much, like here's what we're working on today, here's what I want you to do tonight or for the week or whatever. College, beginning of the semester, you get the syllabus with a list of dates and a list of due dates and a list of assignments and a list of pages to read. And that's great, so students need to learn how to follow it. They also need to know when the professor changes it, that can happen quite a bit. So they need to be paying attention and be taking their notes. A lot of students have as an accommodation a note taker where somebody provides notes for them. But to be active learners, we encourage our students to have a good solid note-taking system for themselves in place. Another thing that's quite different is, like I mentioned, there's fewer assignments that count for more than of the grade. And for students to learn the different pace of a college class is something that takes a little adjusting. You have to do more work on your own and you're not guided by the teacher. And another thing that's been challenging for my students is just managing the system to take exams. So whenever they have a test in a college class, they need to contact the Disability Service Office. Many schools have online forms that they need to fill out, and they just have to stay on top of that. It's just a lot of organizational skills. So we really love to have the students have the practice of at least one class, if not two or more, while they are with us. So when students are taking college classes with us, we provide a fair amount of support, especially the first experience. So for some students, especially at that first experience, we have a staff member accompany them to the classes. If we can work the scheduling that there's a few students taking classes at the same time, we can send a staff member to check on all of them. That's a great thing. So over time, if the student's likely to enroll in a traditional college program, we do try to fade that support back because, you know, there's no aides really available in college. Some students are eligible for personal care attendant services that they manage themselves, but the college doesn't provide any sort of aid support. So at Perkins, when students are taking a college class, we typically carve out time in their schedule for support. So during their computer class, the teacher usually is assisting them with learning how to access the databases, maybe formatting, just different assignments, accessing the book if it isn't fully accessible. We also sometimes do like specific study skills classes around college work. For our students, especially the ones who are residential, we have them learn how to arrange for volunteers and manage that volunteer to maybe do some reading for them or help with forms, or they figure out what sorts of things a volunteer could help them with, and they manage that volunteer's time to give them some support. And again, as the students gain experience, when they're at their second or third experience, we're trying to have them access the support services at the college. So they may seek out a tutor at the college campus, or they certainly go to the Disability Service Office more to get help with their questions. Right now, currently, we have a few students who are registering for their third round of classes, and they're going tomorrow. 2 of them are going completely on their own in a cab to 2 different campuses, and the others are going to have just a little bit more support for the ones who have more time. So we have had students go on to various college programs. Many have been enrolled in community college programs, and I believe have been involved in some of the programs that we'll be hearing about later. Some students have gone to traditional colleges like Gordon, Leslie, Roger Williams, Salve Regina, Framingham State. And we've also had graduates go on and be very successful in transition programs that are not traditional college programs, but they might have a component of college in the program, and those have been really fantastic for our graduates. Some of those have been the Threshold program, Berkshire Hills Music Academy, the college internship program. We had a student go to the campus in Brevard, Florida, and like I mentioned, the Mass Inclusive Concurrent Education program. So that's all I had for comments about what we traditionally do at Perkins. Denise, I don't know if you want us to hold questions to the end.
No, if any students had any questions about what Jen was talking about, then we're good. We can hold the questions to the end.
All right.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. And Mayanne?
Yes.
Mayanne McDonald-Briggs from the Mass Commission for the Blind is coming up next.
Thank you. So as a transition counselor for Mass Commission for the Blind, we are charged with making sure that our students get the services that will assist them becoming more independent at the college and career level. So that falls under the Work Innovation Opportunities Act, and they are called pre-employment transition services that we're supposed to be getting to the students, ages 14 to 22, as long as they're enrolled in a special education situation. So one of our big jobs is to sell the programs that are available. We know that there's Perkins Outreach, Carroll Center for the Blind, but we also have funded programs at Berklee College of Music for a 5-week summer program. We've done a media process at the college and career level. And that takes place probably every single day in school, but like Jen just said, when you have to kind of flip it and do it all for yourself, it really does need a lot of direct instruction in order to get that done. Workplace readiness training, so working on soft skills, how to dress, how to act at an interview, how to do an interview, how to prepare. I work very closely with Denise and with Jen and a lot of the case managers here to make sure that the students know about the opportunities available to them. We offer different kinds of services. Well, first of all, for the students, do you all know who if you're enrolled with Mass Commission for the Blind, do you know who your VR transition counselor is? Ethan, raise your hand. Since it's me. I think that's half the battle. A lot of times if you don't know, I can help you figure that out after. But you should know, and you should be in contact with them, because one of the things is that as you go through this transition process and mature a little bit more, we expect to hear from you folks, not your parents so much. It has to flip to you asking, hey, can I do this program? Can I go to this exciting event? And if you ask, it's a lot easier for us to justify when I send it along. So sending us an email every so often definitely does not hurt. And then as you get towards the end of your education and you're wanting to pursue a college, either degree, associate's degree, whatever it looks like, training program, Mass Commission offers a lot of services that will help you get there. So a lot of this assistive technology that you use currently at school is either your sending districts or Perkins property. So Mass Commission comes in and puts a package of either like a laptop with a note taker or a laptop with an iPad, depending on your needs, so that you have what you need to be successful at the college level. There's also training. There's an assessment that they do, and then training, and a lot of the assessment is talking with your current technology teachers and your folks and yourself, and so that we make sure we do the right thing. Orientation and mobility services on a college campus. So whoever your orientation and mobility instructor is, if you're going to a school that's pretty local, oftentimes they can bring you to that school and do a few preliminary visits to the college, but Mass Commission for the Blind orientation mobility instructors will provide that direct instruction so that you can get from your dorm to the cafeteria to your classes, and you'll learn the whole campus. And actually, that happens whether you're in state or out of state. We will contract with the agency that serves that location. If you go to school in Vermont, it's Vermont Association for the Blind. If you go to Connecticut, SB, but there's lots, and we do it often. And even if it's just Rhode Island, typically it's a Mass Commission worker, subcontractor. We offer books and supplies. Currently it's $650 a semester for books and supplies. So purchasing books, that's not really a lot of money, but it helps. Books are sometimes $200 a piece. Oftentimes, disability services will have electronic books for you, so that's something you would need to inquire about. We also have reader services, so if there are materials that are not accessible, you can hire someone and we will reimburse you up to $150 a month for reader services. When possible, when you filled out your financial aid form, your federal assistance for school form, if there is any unmet need, Mass Commission can assist with that kind of tuition assistance. If you go to an in-state school in Massachusetts, you will not pay tuition, but tuition is the least amount of the fee, total. Public school, yeah, state school, in-state state school. So any of the UMasses, Bridgewater State, Salem State, Worcester State, Framingham State, yeah, any of those schools and any of the community colleges, we will have a tuition remission form that we sign at school. So, one of the other things that I've done is I've met with disability services. If it's, I was at Worcester, so it was out of my territory, but I still went and met with a small school in Worcester who was very concerned about receiving a student who they'd never worked with anyone who's totally blind. So we met 3 times and we kind of walked them through the process of what the equipment was that they were going to need to make this student be able to access the materials. So that I can do at any time, and my counterpart will do the same. Things that we have learned about what and why these services are so important is that we weren't seeing enough positive outcomes for students. They weren't really ready to go off to college. So touch typing, not looking, not hunting and pecking, but honest to God, touch typing 30 words a minute. And it is really hard to fit that in every day, but if you can practice for 20 minutes every day, it's not going to be a problem. But when you're looking for every single letter and trying to write a 7-10 page paper, it's just, it'll fall apart. Note-taking skills, Jen mentioned as well. Coming up with a system now and thinking purposefully about how I want to attack this further down the line. Like, right now it's only this much work, but when it becomes a lot more work, how will I be prepared? Accessing disability services is a big one. Organizational skills, so knowing where you put things and being able to find them when you want them. We've had one student in our assumption program who has lost every single charger that she had at the beginning of the year. And socialization, we had a panel for a program called ESP that's run through the Polis Center, and it was 4 students that had just finished either their first semester or, actually for one it was her 3rd semester. And they talked to the younger students who were in high school, and they discussed the difficulties they've had with socializing on campus and how to access the clubs. But it's really hard because everything here, everyone's talking about the same things, and that makes it easy to join the clubs and the after-school activities, but you're really gonna have to push yourself and take that risk and be willing to do that, because some of those clubs and some of those after-school activities are the things that find you your people. They find, it's where you find your best friends to get through school. And it's really important because that's who you end up studying with, and creating those study kind of communities is really important. I mentioned that we have an assumption program. Polis, the same company. We started a pilot this year. We had 3 students who we knew passed MCAS and were ready, high school graduates, they received their diplomas, but they weren't really as ready as they thought due to different circumstances. So we created a program where they received first semester 2 hours a week of technology instruction, one-to-one technology instruction, 2 hours a week of orientation mobility instruction, and 2 hours a week of rehabilitation teaching, so organization, cooking, cleaning, laundry. What we found out is that the cooking, cleaning, laundry had to take a way backseat because the study skills became number one. And these students had two very recently had become much more visually impaired than they had been in the past. So it was a different level of how they're going to take notes now, and they had to learn a lot of skills. They're learning Braille. 2 of them are learning Braille as we go through this program as well. So I think for them, each of them had different needs, and we kind of thought one was going to have the most difficulty with the socialization piece, and one was going to have the most difficulty with the orientation and mobility, and one was going to have just a hard time organizing. Well, that's the one who lost all of her cords and all of her chargers. And we now bought like a shoe rack that you put on the back of your door, one of those plastic things that you can, and Braille labeled them. So now she gets in the dorm, she puts her charger in the little pouch that it belongs, but it took some time for us to figure that out as a team, to what was going to work best for her. And they did each struggle in areas, but they made it through the semester. They only took 2 classes first semester. One is taking 3 next semester. They started last week, so they're already in. And the other 2 are remaining at 2 classes. And I think that sometimes there's a push to do college in 4 years, and I don't think that that's necessarily everybody's path. And I think that you have to kind of go at your own pace and know what's right for you, and your voice becomes number one in this whole process. If the adults that are around you aren't hearing your voice, then talk to your counselor. We have ways to make them listen. So we're here to partner with you and your families to ensure that you are going to be a success. The first meeting when we write your plan and you tell me that you want to be a radio broadcaster, well then we have to find every opportunity to make sure that you can do that. So, any questions for me? Yes, Thomas?
I thought I heard that the pre-employment programs were age 16 to 22, not 14 to 22.
So, Tom, I think you were probably right smack dab in the middle of when that happened. So, at first, it was 14 to 22. And then a different rehab agency in the state had so many kids that they were going to need to service that they pushed and fought for it to start at 16. So there was about 6 months where kids kind of fell in between the two, and I wasn't able to provide them as many services as we thought. Federal government came in to do an annual, or not every 5 years, they come in and audit all of our books, and they sat down with the transition counselors and said, what's your struggles? And we said that we open a plan at 14, and then we say, okay, we'll see you in 2 years. That doesn't make sense to lose those 2 years of services, and they fought with us and for us, and they moved it back down to 14. So it is 14 to 22, Thomas.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Jen?
Thomas, were you talking about the Perkins Outreach Pre-Employment Program?
Yeah, Perkins outreach.
So that program is, so there's 2 different terms for
Correct.
similar things.
And so the pre-employment program here at Perkins during February school vacation week is pretty much a very, very, very strong recommendation from me to all of the students I work with. It's almost called a requirement, but I can't, because I think the information that you gain is so very valuable. But you don't want to take that until you're at that transition, kind of 2 years before you're leaving school. It is 16 to 22 for that program, yes. Do you want to do it?
Yeah, I don't do
Can you wait till next year?
it. Sure.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, Mayanne.
And very briefly before we turn it over to Debra, I did want to tell you that there is a transition program being offered at Perkins called College Success. And that is, I would really recommend that you take Mayanne's advice very seriously if you strive for that as a goal, because you really do need to be ready to take off and be an independent student. To really do well in college success, your typing should be on par so that you don't have to spend all your time there getting your typing up to speed. That is a really wonderful program. It will teach you study skills. It will teach you some basics about daily living, but you should have those down pat. You should, if you do plan to attend that, really, really work hard at home and in your cottages getting ready, because that the expectation there is that you will be pretty independent. So with that said, any questions about that? There's great information. If you just go to College Success at Perkins, there's a brochure to download. I would recommend some of our teachers look at the brochure on the website, so that if there's a student that you think you can bring forward up to that, it'd be marvelous, because it's a great program. They just finished, I believe, their first school year, second school year. And we're pretty excited about that. With that said, Debra? And you can see on the screen that she is from Institute for Community Inclusion at UMass Boston. If you can't see what's on the screen, we will try our best to highlight really what the focus is on the screen, so don't worry too much about it. You will hear what's on the screen, okay? Thank you, Debra.
I tend to move around, so I'm going to take it out of its holder. Denise, I'd like to thank you for the invitation to participate with you all today. I live in Newton, Mass, but I don't work here very often, so this is exciting for me. I actually drove here, and not to Logan Airport. Just to give you a little background, let me see if I can. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on nationally, then what's going on that's pretty much parallel in Massachusetts, because we were one of the first states in the country that are doing work in supporting students with intellectual disabilities in going to college. And I'll talk about the different types of programs that exist, both in Massachusetts and outside of the state. And then I'm going to spend a fair amount of time talking about some of the data. I know, boring, but it's pretty impressive in terms of what we're seeing for outcomes for students who are with intellectual disability, who are going to college. It's like, it blows me away, because I thought it was a good idea when we first started, but 10 years later, it's like, wow. So I wanted to share some of that with you. And then there's data that we have on what's going on for students who have already left their higher education program and gone on with their lives, what they are doing in comparison to some national core indicators data. And again, we're seeing some incredible different outcomes that I think are exciting. Okay, the ThinkCollege National Coordinating Center, that's pretty much where I'm from, at the Institute for Community Inclusion. It's a very large grant from the Office of Post-Secondary Education, Department of Education on the federal level. And we're charged with providing technical assistance to the universe, both a set of model demonstration projects that are funded through the Office of Post-Secondary Ed, and those that are not. And I'll give you a little bit more information. If you haven't been to the website, and this is a topic you're interested in, I would highly encourage you to go to ThinkCollege, one word, .net, N-E-T. And then it's also, the link to it is on this slide. On the website, I think it's almost got too much information. I have to contact my colleagues to say, where the heck is this, whatever I'm looking for? And then they have to send me the link. So if I'm having trouble, I'm thinking others might too. There's a database. It's the only one in the country that lists all the colleges that have services and supports for students with intellectual disability. And there's some 280, but that number is fluid, and I'll talk about that in a little bit further along. There's a resource library that has anything we've been able to find related to this topic, from job descriptions to research articles that have been published. And we have a lot of resources from Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Inclusive Concurrent Enrollment Initiative, MACI, which I'll talk about in more gory details in a little bit. So the resource library, we encourage people to go and take it, make it a better tool, or whatever you're modifying, let us know so we can put what you've enhanced in it up on the resource library for others. And then there's, what's happening in your state. There's lots of other information on the website that you can download, print. We used to actually have a service that would read if you required that, but we've discontinued that. So if you can let me know of any resources that are good in that regard, we'll explore it again. It didn't work, and it was very expensive, which I don't care if it worked. Okay, let's move from the ThinkCollege website onto in what we do, what's happening nationally. And I'm going to show a video that is captioned, but it really will show you different campuses across the country, and there's interviews with students, so you're going to hear what students have to say about this experience. Parents, excuse me as I choke. Parents and faculty, and a couple college presidents, as I recall. Oh, it's 4 minutes and 11 seconds, so anything I have like that, not too long.
I came from a really small town. I loved it a lot. Really taught me a lot about life and life skills. Helped me come out of my shell.
College was great. It set me on the path that I'm on today. It took me to Peace Corps, and now it took me to a new job.
Oh, college was great. I owe my career to it. I even met my wife there.
Who do you think should go to college?
I think everyone should go to college.
I think everybody should go to college.
Anybody that wants to.
What about people with intellectual disabilities?
What?
That's a good question.
I never really thought about that.
I have pretty high expectations for myself, and then there's always the expectations of the professors, and it's the blend between the two that's most important. I've always found a way to do well, or do my best in all of my courses, no matter what.
I do know that she belongs in this classroom because she has a lot to offer, and she thinks about the works that we're discussing, and the class accepts her on that level completely.
the people in school see, oh, she has a disability, don't talk to her, she's so different from everybody else, but here, they accept you as who you are, and they say, you're a college student, you're a human being, you're the same thing here.
I think there's so many ways how kids can look at so many challenges, so many ways. There's so many ways how people can change.
The University of North Florida is a great experience for people to relate to college. And they did not ask me if I wanted to go to college. I chose to go to college because I thought that that would be a better path in life for me. It's freedom, basically.
The dream is me going to college and being like a graphic designer or somebody doing art. Art is like my passion.
All my family pretty much went to college, and I said, why not me? Even though I have a disability, I can still go. I can go anywhere I want to go.
We're helping these particular students become more productive citizens and more well-rounded citizens of our country. I think it's just really important. We don't have throwaway people.
It's really enriched the people on this campus, and it's just made it a much nicer place to work. It just amazes me how well it's gone and how proud everybody is of it, both internally and externally, and what it's done for these kids' lives.
We are working with a very important part of our population that has traditionally been underserved. A second major reason is because Kennesaw State itself wants to be as inclusive as it possibly can and provide high quality education for anyone who wants to obtain that education. And the third is possibly the more basic, the most basic of the three. It's just simply the right thing to do.
The revolution is kids with disabilities going to college and having the opportunities. And I just really want to stoke those flames and get that fire, that revolution really going, because this is where the revolution begins. It begins now. It begins with us.
We did not pay that young girl to say that. This was her own scripting. It just so happened. It's pretty powerful, I think. Do you feel like you got a kind of a taste of what's going on around the country? It's
Can I ask you a question?
Whoa. Okay, wrong way.
Can I ask you a question?
No. You can't. Okay. And it was really, we went to, I didn't, but the film crew went to Florida, Wisconsin, California. We covered the country to really get a snapshot of what's going on. And one of the main things was looking at where there were really authentic programs that were inclusive, meaning there weren't specialized or separate courses. It was the real deal, if you will. And I like to use this definition of inclusion because the young man in this slide, this is his definition, and I think it speaks volumes. And what it says is, to me, inclusion means that all people should be allowed to live fully without limitations and go places just as everyone else gets to go, like college. So I think it really captures the spirit these programs are going for, and Congress's intent in the Higher Education Opportunities Act of 2008 was passed to create the points on this slide. I'm going to go through a number of them, so even if you're not reading it, you'll get a sense of what's on here. The law passed in 2008, and then it was implemented in 2010. So there was a 2-year lag between that. But it was very exciting because it says for the first time ever, legally, students with intellectual disabilities can go to college. And certain things were waived, like you don't need a high school diploma, and there's no ability to benefit tests. You know, the AccuPlacer, I think you meant, that's not relevant to this student population. So it's important to recognize that. It created, I'm going to use some acronyms, and I sincerely apologize for doing that, but if you're going to participate in this and learn what the law says, you need to know a couple of the acronyms. And they're all terrible too, you'll hear in a minute. Okay, a CTP, a Comprehensive Transition Program. There's an application to become one of these. What it means is the college that you're going to has been approved as a Comprehensive Transition Program, CTP. There's a application that's required, and then it goes to the federal financial aid. So it means you become, as a student, you would become eligible for financial aid, which is pretty cool because that means you've got funds to be able to pay for courses yourself. The website ThinkCollege.net, NET, has a module that teaches the college personnel, federal financial aid office, and whomever's from the program side of things on how to fill out the application. There's also samples for you, and we encourage people to copy and paste it and tweak it to customize to their own situation. Okay, so the CTP, if you've got you've been approved, federal financial aid. There's also $11.8 million that are allocated annually for the last 19 years. I'm sorry, 10 years. It started in 2010. There were 27 model demonstration programs that were approved for up to $500,000 a year. So it's a robust program. And this is the last year of the second group of 25 model demonstrations. It'll be coming up. It's in the budget, and it will be coming up open to application for the third time, probably this spring. We are funded under this program, so we get to collect volumes and volumes of data on individual student level, what's going on, and also on the program level, like what are these programs doing that are working and what's not working. So it's kind of cool that way. Here's another acronym, TIPSID. Does not roll off the tongue with ease at any rate. It's a transition post-secondary education programs for students with intellectual disability. That's the model demonstration programs. And the goal is to create, expand, or enhance high-quality, inclusive higher education experiences and produce better outcomes once students leave school, and especially for students with intellectual disabilities. Any questions so far? Okay. Most of the programs have alternate admissions requirements. They all vary. Congress did not dictate what those need to be, with the exception of students do not have to have a high school diploma or take ability to benefit tests. The majority of students are non-degree seeking students. That means most of them are not looking for a bachelor's or an associate's degree or higher. However, more recently, we're starting to see an increase of students attaining a credential, and I'm going to give you some figures on what that looks like. The programs, the majority are 2 years in length, although there's more 4-year institutes of higher ed that are offering these services. I didn't realize before I started doing this work that a lot of 4-year schools have 2-year programs, so it's not unusual. Like Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond has a 2-year program that was already existed. They've just increased the amount of services and supports that the students who participate in that program get. We've talked about the aid, okay. IHE, another acronym, an Institute of Higher Education. And here you see 64%, so over majority are at 4-year, 36% are at 2-year. And there's about a third of those students are duly enrolled. What do I mean by duly enrolled? Anybody have a clue? What does that mean? Yeah?
To be enrolled in high school and college at the same time.
You're enrolled in high school and college at the same time. In Massachusetts, it is a dual enrollment program. So students age 17, 18 to age 22 in our state are in the Mass Inclusive Concurrent Enrollment and Initiative. And in fact, the federal legislation was kind of modeled on what we were doing here in Massachusetts at the time. Students participate in courses for credit or non-credit. That's kind of a no-brainer. We're seeing more students participate for credit now because faculty are starting to tell us that students who are in these programs are so much more into what they're teaching. They come to every class, they do sometimes modified assignments, and it's making the instructor feel a lot better than neurotypical students, if you will, students without disabilities. There's lots of internship and work study, paid and unpaid, and paid jobs, and you're going to see how important the paid part is in just a little bit. Students participate in a huge array of campus life in different organizations. I think that one key area is underrated because what happens is students may make some really bad choices. I remember when I was my first year in school, my first semester, my GPA was 1.93, and I got a pink slip in my box. I had never seen my advisor. I didn't know. I was just having fun, saying, this isn't going to work. You've got to step up and get yourself organized. But it's a real, I'm using myself as an example, but I really had no idea what college was going to be. I should have taken a gap year, and I'm not alone. And both of you commented how students need to learn how it's different from high school. And I really would challenge high schools to start to change on some of the practices they're doing. Because I know colleagues of mine who have kids, one in particular, she dropped him off at George Washington University, cried the whole way home, back to Massachusetts, and then was like, by Monday, I'm going to kill this kid. He keeps constantly calling me, he doesn't know where his underwear is. You know, how, he wants me to call the bursar's office. It was like, he didn't have a label of intellectual disability or anything. It was just, his mom had done everything for him. With the best of intentions. So, I think it's important to get the word out to high school and families that needs to change. Students need to learn to do much, much more for themselves. Any comments or questions about that? Yes. I see a hand up.
Thomas.
I noticed that some of these acronyms are like regular abbreviations.
Some of them are regular abbreviations. You're correct. I'm impressed. Okay. Higher education programs, how many are there? Today, when I last looked, I think it was 282, but by now, that was this morning, it might be at 280. It varies. Many of these programs self-identify to us, because we're not, I mean, I feel like I travel a lot, but I'm not everywhere at any one point in time to identify these programs. But the database is on the ThinkCollege.net website. And you can make comparisons between programs. People have reported to us that they find it extremely helpful, like family members working with their son or daughter on starting the search. There's also a how-to brief under publications on how to do the search and what questions to ask and things to look for. And we've heard from students and families that was really, really helpful. Okay, you can see from 2004 there were 25 programs, and then at 2009-10 it jumps to 149. That's because the law passed. And then it continues to have an upward projectile, all the way to the 280 right now.
I have a question from outside.
Please.
So, why are all these programs ending at age 22? When the state allows our kids to attend high school till age 21 or 22?
The majority of the programs don't end at 22. In Massachusetts, however, because an important piece of legislation hasn't passed yet, where, fingers crossed, has been supported to ensure that students, once they reach age 22, they can continue their college education should they choose. It just hasn't passed yet.
So this mother's actually from New York, so the 22 doesn't end for everybody?
No, it does not.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, here's another slide, because often people are like, well, where are these programs? This particular slide lets you see how many are in a particular state. What do you notice? Do you see a lot more on the East Coast than the West Coast?
Yes.
Yes, there's a lot more. Well, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire really don't have a lot going on. They have one or two. Vermont, there's 3. Massachusetts has 18. That includes Threshold, Riverview, and I think Berkshire. But those are not your typical inclusive programs. But this is not a directory or a good housekeeping seal of approval if you make it onto that database. It's an attempt to get information, updated information to families, students, and professionals. And we're not in the business of saying this is good and this is bad. That's for you all to determine. But you see, in the Midwest section, flyover country, some people call it, there's many states with 1 or 2. We get calls all the time asking, why isn't there anything in my state? Or there's only one, and that you see the size of these states are large. So that means you'd have to drive a fair amount of distance to get to a college, or you'd have to have residential options, and the majority do not offer residential. We'll talk about that in a minute. But in Massachusetts, we're in pretty good shape. Not as good as I'd like it to be. And let's look at Massachusetts. This is the Massachusetts Inclusive Concurrent Enrollment Initiative Partnerships. They're referred to as partnerships. Why is that? Because the Institute of Higher Education, the host college or university, is required to partner with geographic school districts in the geographic area surrounding it. And you can see, just to give you a sense of the breadth of programs, the UMass Amherst, Holyoke Community College, Westfield, Mass Bay, Framingham State, Massasoit Community College, Bridgewater State University, Bristol, Cape Cod Community College, UMass Boston, Bunker Hill, Salem State, Middlesex, and Northern Essex. So there's a lot. And this doesn't include Threshold, Riverview. So this is only the colleges or universities that are part of the Massachusetts Inclusive Concurrent Enrollment. Yes?
I have an outside question.
Okay.
What is the criterion to be considered intellectual disability to access these programs? A particular diagnosis or IQ level?
IQ is not used in the federal legislation nor in the state funding that supports this initiative. It's the functional definition of an individual with an intellectual disability. And in Massachusetts, that also includes students on the autism spectrum. So I think it's, oh gosh, do I trust my memory? I'm old if you hadn't noticed. So I forget. I think the definition is that a student has challenges in 3 or more of the major life areas. Now this has been going since 2007. 2 of the sites in the partnership initiative here, Holyoke Community College and Mass Bay Community College, are self-sustaining. They do not take, there's a line item in our state budget. It varies. The lowest I think I've seen is around 400,000 to 2 million. So there's a wide range of funding, and it's approved annually. So it's dependent on the state legislature. But they've been approving this since 2007, so it's showing very positive outcomes for students. And here's the full partnerships that you see, like Bridgewater State University is the largest. And look at all the school districts they work with. It's pretty impressive. In comparison to UMass Boston, focuses most of their students are Boston, Watertown, Cambridge. Yes?
Can you tell a little bit about when you're saying positive outcomes, what sorts of things are included within that?
I didn't pay you, did I? I'm going to.
A cookie.
A cookie, okay. I'm going to cover that in just a little bit. So I'll take that as my cue. Let's look at some of the data that we have from the model demonstration program, because that's the cleanest, most reliable data that we have in this area. What you see on the map is all the programs from 2010 to 2020. I feel like Barbara Walters every time I say 20T20. But I'm aging, I'm showing my age right there. Again, it's like the distribution of all the programs across the country. The Southeast has a major number of programs, and then there's very little in the Midwest and the West Coast. And what we've seen, this represents 93 programs, so you can see we're starting to amass a body of knowledge and information across 90 institutes of higher ed. You may say, well, why isn't it 93? Some of you may think that, right? Several programs have more than one higher education option. Like Syracuse University has 2 programs. And it's serving well over now, it's actually close to 4,000 students across 31 states. So this is reliable information, I believe. This is the breakout of who the students are from year 3. The majority, 90%, are in that 18 to 25-year-old group, which runs very similar to the typical college-going population. "96% have an intellectual disability and/or autism, and 4%, even though this is a program for students with intellectual disabilities, 4% only have autism. And we've seen an increase in that, and Massachusetts, I think in response to that, opened up the Inclusive Concurrent Enrollment Initiative to students on the autism spectrum. Now here I think it's interesting, the gender breakup. 38% are female and 62% are male. Well, there's more males with intellectual disabilities than females, but not that much more that it would be like this. Any ideas of why the girls attending are so low? The attendance rate?
Kyle has an answer.
Kyle?
Maybe because even though girls usually don't have usually get it, they're more likely to carry the gene.
I see what you're saying. That could be. That's a more scientific answer. That's pretty good. There are more males, though, that have intellectual disabilities, but not that much. Any other? Who's here a parent? Parents? Any ideas why there's less girls than boys? No?
I'm sorry, I would assume that's the same reason as why women are paid less and get fewer jobs, that they're not as encouraged to.
It could be they're not as encouraged. And I think the motivation from a family perspective, because I hear that too, is drugs, sex, and rock and roll. Happens in college. They want to keep their girls home and safe. But that's just Debra Hart's anecdotal information. I don't have data on that. I just find it odd that it's so low. And the other that I'll point out is around dual enrollment is at 18% across those model demonstrations, and 82% are serving adults. Students have exited school, and we're seeing a decrease in the number of students who are still in high school going, when it would make more sense, because where do peers without disabilities, what happens at 18, 19? They go to college or go to work, or probably a little bit of both. So I'd like to see it increase the number of dually enrolled students. So there was a much more, so it's more aligned with the general population and what they're doing. Okay, let's look at some of the academics. Students are taking, on average, 3 courses per semester. Most of the students I know, and those in Massachusetts, they take 1 to 2. And they're auditing, but as I mentioned before, there's an increase in the number of students that are being encouraged by their professors to actually take the course over and take it for credit. So you see an increase, 31% courses taken for credit. And this has gone up since 2009, where 64% of students are receiving services from disability support offices. It was at 51%, so we're seeing an increase with that. But most of all, what's happening is a proliferation of use of mentors and educational coaches. And the programs that are doing that are really cool. Those services that are coming out of disability support offices, they've just enhanced the range of services and supports that they provide. They may call these additional services ambassadors, peer mentor, I mean, there's different names, but it's essentially, it's another human that's supporting the student to meet with success and helping them with their assignments, note-taking, a whole range of different supports and services. Some are paid, some are not paid. Any questions on that? Here's a sample of some of the courses that students are taking. You see academic courses, business is a big one, technology, arts, wellness stuff, yoga is popular. But one of the main things we're seeing now, and not just for students with intellectual disabilities, and both of you in your comments talked about the need for students to have those foundational soft skills. Well, that's, as I mentioned before, that's for every student. So a lot of programs now have bridge programs or first year mandatory courses that all students have to take. And I think they're fabulous. So if that exists, that's a good direction to go in. But there's a wide range of types of classes. Okay, employment, what's happening there? 47% of the students in this model demonstration program are employed while they're participating in the college initiative. 31% are getting services from their vocational rehab agency, or in this case, it would be from Mass Rehab Commission in Massachusetts. 56%, now this is important, 56% of these students had never had a paid job prior to being in this program. So we're starting to see some significant increases in employment. This is paid employment while in college. The orange, the bottom line here, is really paid employment of individual students who are in that college program. The purple is full-time undergraduate students who are employed. And you can see by the 4th and 5th year, students with intellectual disabilities and students without a label who weren't seen as having a disability were running about the same. In the second cohort or group of students, it's actually improved. Around 50%, it drops to 47. So we're seeing some very, very positive employment outcomes that are quite powerful. And if you look at the next slide, this is paid employment at exit. And the two lines, the blue is showing students with intellectual disabilities within 90 days of exiting from a program. 40 all the way up to 44% of paid employment at exit. Compared to the regular cohort of students who don't go to college, who have an intellectual disability, is really, has gone up as 19%. There's a big difference. What do people think about that? Yes?
I thought it would have been the other way around.
Nope. The college is having an impact on employment. And it makes sense if you think about it, because it helps employment outcomes for the majority of college-going young people who, when they come out, they can make more money, and they're getting professional jobs. It's no different for students with ID, with intellectual disabilities, is my point, a long-winded point.
A question from outside?
Sure.
Do you know offhand if there are blind or visually impaired people with positive outcomes?
I don't know what it is for visually impaired. This data would include individuals who were visually impaired, who had a developmental disability, because this is from the National Core Indicators data. I don't happen to know the breakout of those with who are blind. Okay, student life. What does that look like? The majority of students, when they exited, they went back home if they were living on campus, or they were with their family. That's almost 70% of the students. Only 11% were in campus housing. That's an area of need that the whole program needs to really work on and look at. I can tell you from conversations I've had with college presidents or student affairs folks, is they're really concerned about liability, that something could happen. So they don't want to open up their residential options, and they'll use all kind of excuses, but the number one really reason is liability. Now in Massachusetts, Bridgewater has opened their dorms to students with intellectual disabilities and autism. And it's a great experience because that's where you learn some of those independent living skills. Yes?
What does IHE stand for?
Institute of Higher Education. It's kind of a acronym to describe the world. Instead of saying 2-year and 4-year, and then you can just say Institute of Higher Ed. Any other questions on this?
This is kind of specific about the housing. Do you know if, so Mass-based students can live at Framingham State, but can the students in the Transitional Scholars Program live at Framingham State? Do you know?
I don't think so. Now, I've had conversations, and this goes back 2 years, with the Department of DDS, what is it? Developmental Services. I'm so not here that I forget all of that. That might be a nice partnership and a really smooth, seamless transition if they were able to offer residential supports to students who were going. And fortunately, I didn't hold my breath, but it makes sense. And if we can ever get the legislation to allow students to continue to truly be lifelong learners as adults, I think that that would be the next progression, is really looking at opening up some of the residential, the whole network of providers in the state. I mean, that there's no reason they couldn't, really. There's always work to do, you know? Okay, campus engagement. These students are very, very engaged in the college life and what goes on in campus, the good and the bad. And that's a good thing, because it's kind of a protected environment, if you think about it. And most of the students have a peer mentor, so helping them navigate the social aspects of going to college and attending sports and all the good stuff. Think back, if you went to college, all that fun stuff, parties. Okay, credentials. The majority, almost 75%, of the students earned a credential that was awarded by the Institute of Higher Education, the college or university. So now that that is happening, there's been some controversy with vocational rehabilitation, but the Rehab Services Administration that oversees on the federal level the vocational rehab program, and they've recently issued a guidance letter saying you can use, that a school district or the state could support students using IDEA funds and voc rehab funds. It's on our website, the letter, the guidance. And I just saw it, is it Mark Schultz, the new voc rehab commissioner?
MRC?
No, federal. Because there's going to be a push from the federal level right now. He's very tuned into this, and because of the positive employment outcomes, I think they're going to really start to emphasize and loosen some of the, because it used to be, like last year used to be, you had to be going to a specially designed curriculum and or an industry recognized credential was what you were working toward. The majority of these are not either. So it left voc rehab with a lot of unhappy clients, if you will, customers, because they were looking for support to go to college. And VR was saying, no, this isn't an industry recognized credential. Predictors of employment. And I'm just highlighting a couple because one in particular, because they blew me away. I had the statistician run this a couple times. What didn't predict paid employment? Unpaid career development experience. So if you're doing that, if your program doing that, and I would think just in general, that's the bulk of the experience that students are getting. Statistically, it's not a significant predictor of paid employment. I was shocked, really. We spent a fair amount of time at the center looking at this and making sure it was correct, where we, you know, because the majority of students are in unpaid career experiences. What do people think about that?
Well, I'm struck, first of all, that the unpaid career experiences here get them ready to be paid. So, like, I would defer to a student who might work in the Perk Cafe. Do you get paid right away, or do you have to first attain a level and then get paid? Is anyone over there that... Jen, do you know the answer?
So I think at the Perk Cafe, it's actually, I think you're paid right away, but we do have like experiences, like, for the
Volunteer
younger ages.
first.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So we will have to look at that, because we've got kids all over the place doing things, building their stamina.
I think the issue more, and I don't have data on this to substantiate what I'm gonna say, I think what happens in many programs, it's eternal. It doesn't stop. Students aren't, it's not a short time limitation, or the student's not ready for paid work. So I think it's important to keep it in mind.
Is that Charlie?
Yeah.
Did you have a question? Yes. He thinks I interrupted him. Charlie, you have a question?
Yeah, so I wonder what is like the college program? It's another program?
Yes, you just got here, so we'll tell you all about the first part of this. But right now we were talking about volunteerism and paid versus non-paid.
So right now it's all about the issue. Right?
Yes, exactly. The issue we're on right now is whether or not unpaid jobs get you ready or are a good predictor.
Paid work predicts paid work. And there's data in the transition literature, not from ThinkCollege now, that says the same thing. So if you're not having paid work, I mean, if you look at this, students who obtained a paid job while in a higher education program were almost 15 times more likely to exit with a paid job than those who didn't. That's pretty powerful. So if you're a student or a family member looking at these programs, you're going to want to ask questions about this. Because I think, because there's other data sources that are adding up together with what we're finding. Yes?
Can I ask a question? So when on the other slide when you were referencing that they're less likely to get a paid job from unpaid experiences, do you know if they were like adding that experience on their resume?
The majority of students do have their work experience on their resumes.
Even if it's unpaid experience?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
And that's just not resonating for employers. And I think there's maturation and a whole bunch of other skill acquisition that goes on with a paycheck. Okay, do I still have a little time?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to show you the follow-up data. It's not a whole bunch, so hang in there if you can. This is, students have left college now, okay? And it's a small sample size. It's not the 3,000 whatever. This is based on 155 students. 65% of those who went to the model demonstration program had a paid job 1 year post leaving. And if you think of the national core indicator data that I talked about before, where it's anywhere from 17% employed to, I've seen 19 and 20%. Nothing as close as the 65% employed. I mean, that's really powerful. And the majority of the student, 32% that were not working, were pursuing work and were continuing their post-secondary experience. They were still going to school. They decided they wanted to be an eternal student or lifelong learning. I don't know. I'm joking. But they're actively engaged and still going to college. And the majority said they were satisfied or very satisfied with their social with you. One is a parent who used to work at the Federation for Children with Special Needs. Some of you may know her, Julie Sinclair. She now works at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed. But she started with her son early on in, I think they were, I don't think, they were at Holyoke Community College. And here's...
If I could say something to parents.
Here's her advice.
Okay, this is hard. It's time to let go. It's time to let go and believe in your kid. And I think the hardest thing about transition and going to college is that sometimes it's only the student and the parent, sometimes, who only thinks that it will be true. We have to believe in our kids, and we have to push them along, and we have to inspire others to believe in our kids, and to give them the dignity to try, the dignity to fail, the dignity to succeed in life. And I think that's just so important. And a lot of times parents will say, I don't want my kid out there. I don't want, what if this happens or that happens? I thought about that too. And I thought how great it is that if this happens, I'm only a half an hour away. If this happens, I can help him so next time it happens, he has the strategies and the skills to deal with it. To maybe have a stronger voice, to advocate for himself. The other thing I think is really important for families is that no matter what age your child is, it's time to allow them to make choices. So at my house, everybody showers every day. I don't care when you shower. You can shower in the morning, you can shower in the afternoon, you can shower at night. I don't care. Everyone showers. But that gave Andrew the choice. I don't have to do it at night. I can do it in the morning, or I can do it. Didn't matter to me. That's just a quick example that we need to allow our children, and as young adults, be able to make choices so that they know how to, and they're able to do self-determination, determine what's best for them. And then we move forward, giving them a voice. Now the thing about giving a student a voice is you have to listen. And you have to be respectful. And you have to let even people with disabilities have a journey of self-discovery, just like everybody else. So I think that's really important. A lot of times we try and set up the environment or set up the options and not really allow them to live their life. You know, life is full of risks. And we're there to make sure that, you know, certainly people stay safe, and certainly that they have the supports they need to be successful. But we're not there to take their life away. We're there to ensure that they're successful. And for parents, for sure, you will be surprised beyond belief. But it's time to get on the bandwagon and think differently about your child with intellectual disabilities, because if you let go and let them, they will surprise you, for sure.
Thoughts?
That was nice. That's good.
Her son, I think he... like another country out there. Okay, I have one more slide to show you, and it's only, I think this one's 60 seconds. It's, so just so you know, you don't have to sit and listen for a long time. If you're anything like me, I have the attention span of a gnat. You know, it's about 15, 20 seconds. But we got connected with Comcast, the cable company. They adopted us as a project from the School of Business Management at UMass Boston. And they developed a 20, 30-second and 60-second public service announcement for us. and it aired on Comcast from April 1st through December 31st, 2018. So I only knew about it because I started getting texts, and it was summer, and the Red Sox were doing well, and the commercial aired during that time. So I thought, oh, look at this. You'll see. If I can get the technology to work.
When I was younger, I was never told to think about going to college.
I was never really told to think big about much.
But I still wanted to go to college.
Like my sister.
It took a lot of work.
But I made it.
And I'm a student at Bridgewater State University.
At Mass Bay Community College.
UMass Boston. So make your dreams come true.
And ThinkCollege.
For information about college for people with intellectual disabilities, visit thinkcollege.net.
It really is about having high expectations for your students that you're working with, your friends, your son or daughter. You know, without that, I don't think things will change. So go for the gold, kind of, or platinum, or whatever. I'll be around if people have questions or want more information. Just let me know.
And I just want to thank you all. We do have close connections with some of the schools that were referred to today. I know a lot of parents have gone out to Berkshire Hills. We also are working with DDS to talk about some of the housing concerns that we have. Even at some of the programs where the day programs might be a great fit, the residential programs are not. So we're seeing what we can do. Even outside of this presentation, we are working on these same things, and I'm thrilled. Many of you know that I do have a son who is blind and has some hearing difficulties, and a lot of this resonated today, that he doesn't have an intellectual disability. He only was a English speaker for 4 years before he went to college. So in some ways he functioned, in some ways, you know, he needed a lot more help than some people. And I had to, as a parent, really remember that it was his life, and that though I was paying the tuition, it was his life. And the courses he chose and the clubs he chose were his. And I was thrilled when he started swing dancing, because he really wanted to meet people. And so it resonated when I heard about the social life. He wanted to meet people, and he was a churchgoer, but church really wasn't a place where he was meeting a lot of people. So he started swing dancing because he heard that the girls were dancing with each other, and there were no males there at Gordon College's swing dance. So Yege appeared one night, and his dance card was full because he was the only guy there, and he ended up marrying somebody that he met on that very first night. So it just expanded his whole community by having friends and having a sport that was random. Swing dancing? I mean, he never did that here at Perkins. He did attend Perkins. But so much of this just reminds me of the work that we can do getting kids ready, and these students that were here today listening so carefully. There are things we can do to have them be more successful, and for us to step back now and know why we're stepping back. Teach the skills and then let them practice and let them struggle a little bit. It's okay, and that's how they're going to make their experiences work in the future. The other thing I will say is College Success has invited us over, not right now, but we can take a trip. We'll be doing a sign-up sheet in the weekly notice, and we will have kind of an open house at College Success for anybody who just wants to see what that's like. Staff, students, parents, anybody, just to take a trip and meet some of the staff over there. And I'm sure we could do other visits to other programs too. So I thank you, Debra, very much. I'm glad we caught you when you were in Boston. Every time I spoke with Debra, she was heading to somewhere, not here. So I really appreciate your time, and certainly the time of everybody who's worked so hard at UMass in the inclusion, because these are the kinds of things that really, they've made a difference. And when we're looking at our young people, and we say there are lots and lots of paths that you can follow. There isn't one. Everybody who went to college, we all went to different colleges. So there's all kinds of life experiences ahead. And I'm just excited to know more about some of them. And also just to work on some of the base concepts, why paid employment leads to paid employment. That's a fantastic one. So things like that. So thank you all for coming, and all of you online, signing off. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.